After the humiliation, cleaner outshines salespeople with a $50K cash purchase at 3 a.m. The clock struck 3 in the morning, and the neon lights of the city flickered with a treacherous glow. Julia, the once humbled cleaner, strode through the glass doors of Luxor Motors, her heart pounding like a frantic drum. The late-night atmosphere was thick with tension, whispers moving like secrets in the dark. This was no ordinary Saturday night, it was the night everything changed. Beneath the flickering fluorescent lights, Julia stood out dressed in her work uniform, a stark contrast to the flashy suits around her. The air carried a hint of expensive cologne as the salespeople chuckled over their overpriced drinks, dismissing her presence as mere entertainment. But what those salespeople didn't know was that she was about to turn the tables in a way no one saw coming. Her hands trembled with excitement and fear as she revealed a thick envelope, brimming with cash like a treasure chest, 50,000 in crisp, $100 bills. "Can you believe this? A cleaner wants to buy a car," one salesman sneered, a smirk playing on his lips. But Julia's resolve steeled, igniting a fire in her chest. Just yesterday, she was the target of their jokes, scoffed at for cleaning their offices while they flaunted their wealth. Now, their disbelief ignited a spark of defiance deep within her. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. The sales team felt a sense of urgency creeping in, laughter faded into hushed murmurs. Julia placed her cash on the counter, a glint in her eye matching the sparkle of the showroom lights. She was ready to pick the car of her dreams, but it wasn't just about the wheels, it was about reclaiming her worth, showing them all they misjudged her. "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect." With her heart racing, Julia suddenly noticed the head of sales, a slick man with a shark-like demeanor, fixing his icy gaze on her. The atmosphere thickened, each heartbeat echoing like a drumroll, anticipation hanging heavy in the air. Could she really pull this off? Did they realize what was about to unfold? As she scanned the gleaming cars, determination poured through her veins. The fate of her future and a chance at respect lay just within reach. But would they let her? Would they recognize her as more than just a cleaner? As she stepped toward the rows of luxury vehicles, her fate lingered like a dark cloud overhead. What awaited her in this high-stakes game, and would she uncover an opportunity beyond her wildest dreams? Julia's breath caught in her throat as she edged closer to the sleek lines of a black Mercedes-Benz, its surface gleaming like obsidian under the harsh lights. She could almost feel the salesperson's eyes boring into her, disbelief etched on their faces. They stood behind her at the counter, their hushed whispers growing louder, edged with a simmering tension that threatened to burst. "Are you serious?" The head of sales, a man with a slick-back haircut and an arrogant tilt to his chin, stepped forward. He glanced at the envelope, then back at her. "Do you even know what you want?" She clenched her fists. Yes, she knew what she wanted, and it wasn't just a car, it was a statement. "I'd like to test drive that one," she pointed, her voice steadier than her pulse. The slick man scoffed, shooting a glance at the others. "You're just wasting our time." Julia's heart raced, her fingers twitching near the cash. It would be so easy to shove it back into her bag and walk away, be the cleaner again. But humiliation had morphed into a fierce resolve. "No," she responded, her voice resolute. "I'm not wasting anyone's time. I'm here to buy a car." His smirk faltered, confusion clouding his face. The crowd of salespeople, once dismissive, shifted slightly, their lenses of entitlement cracking just a bit. Julia felt the weight of their stares, felt every whisper dissecting her efforts to stand tall in a room designed to crush people like her. "Fine." With a condescending wave of his hand, he led her to the car. "You can test drive it, but only for a minute. Let us not pretend you're serious about this." As she slid into the leather seat, the delicious smell wrapping around her felt intoxicating, a world away from her usual surroundings. She turned the ignition, and the powerful engine roared to life. It was more than a car, it was freedom. With a quick glance at the head salesperson, she pressed the accelerator, feeling the car surge forward. Her heart raced with exhilaration, and her nerves turned to adrenaline. Behind her, the group's chatter intensified, some words clear, others muffled by the rush of wind through the partially rolled-down windows. "She's just a cleaner. Who does she think she is?" But she didn't care anymore. In that moment, with the city lights streaking past, she felt powerful, unstoppable, but as she approached the corner, something unexpected caught her attention. Her phone buzzed angrily in her pocket. It was a message from an unfamiliar number, but its urgency was palpable. "You need to come back. Now." Julia's stomach twisted, torn between the thrilling rush of speed and the ominous pull of that text. The words echoed in her mind as she tightened her grip on the steering wheel. Was it a joke? A setup? Doubt festered. Had she stepped into something far darker than mere salesmanship? She took a deep breath, preparing to turn back when suddenly, the headlights of an approaching vehicle flickered into existence. It was too close, too fast, a stark presence in her rearview mirror. With her pulse quickening further, she knew one thing: whatever happened next would change everything. But what awaited her on the other side of that intersection? A new challenge or an unexpected reckoning? The clock was ticking, and she had to choose. The tension coiled tighter around her as she pushed the gas pedal down even harder, propelling her into an uncertain future that threatened to swallow her whole. The roar of the engine drowned out everything else: her doubts, the whispers, the fear. Julia felt as if she were hurtling through time, caught in some fleeting moment where nothing mattered but the here and now. She glanced in the rearview mirror but didn't dare to look for long. The vehicle was right on her tail, weaving through traffic like a predator stalking its prey. Her heart thumped hard against her chest as the Mercedes struck a rhythm that seemed almost melodic to her newly liberated spirit. The city's skyline blurred by. She'd often dreamt of this moment, imagined herself escaping into the night, leaving behind the drudgery of her old life, a life where she was merely invisible, but the urgency of the message tugged at her mind, urging her to turn back. What if it's something important, mixed with the adrenaline that surged through her veins? Each second stretched like a thin wire, ready to snap. As the traffic light shifted to yellow ahead, an unexpected choice flared before her. She could stop, make a U-turn, heed that ominous warning, or fuel the fire ready to engulf her future. Julia's foot hesitated over the brake. She could hear her own breath, tight and labored. The car behind her closed in even more, headlights illuminating her tense expression. A horn blared, a sharp note of urgency that spiked her heart rate. It jolted her from her indecision. The exhilaration settled in, wrapping around her like a cloak of defiance. She floored the gas pedal instead. The Mercedes leaped forward, roaring into motion, and she felt an electric thrill surge through her. The light turned red just as she blasted through it, crystals of adrenaline coursing through her, wild and liberating. Behind her, the screech of tires filled the air, combined with furious honking. She stole one more glance back. The car was still there, tighter than ever against her. "Who the hell are you?" She spat at the dashboard, knowing it couldn't answer her. In the back of her mind, fear scraped against triumph. Deep breaths. "Just drive," she whispered to herself, fortifying her resolve. She swerved onto a less crowded street, letting instinct guide her. The hum of the engine was music, a symphony of speed and raw freedom, but the reality of the message clouded her mind. "You need to come back. Now." The thought nagged at her, like a persistent itch. Was she in danger? Who was it from? The mysterious sender felt more sinister with every passing moment. Shadows lurked at the edges of her thoughts. As she ventured deeper into unfamiliar territory, an uneasy feeling settled in her stomach, like a stone. Almost intently, she checked her surroundings. Tall buildings loomed close, graffiti splattered across the walls, a stark contrast to the pristine car she was driving. Then, suddenly, another vehicle sped into view on the intersection ahead, blocking her path. Panic surged within her. Did they know she was in the car? Was that who had sent the text? Before she had time to think, she yanked the wheel to the left, veering sharply down what appeared to be a secluded alley. The image of sleek suits and judgment flared in her mind, a world that had rejected her. What was she running from? Or was it a world she was finally breaking free of? But the alley turned out to be a dead end, stalls and crates piled high, the walls closing in on her. She slammed her brakes, the tires screeching in protest as she came to a halt. The darkness wrapped around her, hearts pounding, and silence pressed in like a suffocating blanket. As she sat there, breathless and staring at the looming end of the road, a figure emerged from the shadows, an unknown threat silhouetted against the glimmering city lights behind. "Julia," a voice hissed, piercing through the tension. She knew that voice. The clock had run out on her fleeting taste of freedom. In that moment, as reality rushed back in, she was face to face with everything she had tried to escape. But what did they want? And how far was she willing to go to hold on to her new fate? The figure stepped forward, the glint of metal in the dim light sending a chill down her spine. Julia's heart raced, each thud ringing like a war drum in her ears. As the face of her pursuer came into view, recognition struck her like a slap. It was Evan, the one person she thought she'd never have to confront again. "Julia, you shouldn't have run," he said, his tone a mix of disbelief and a predatory calm that made her blood run cold. "What do you want?" She shot back, her voice trembling despite the defiance. She refused to let fear take over. "I'm not going back." Evan laughed, but there was no humor in it, just a chilling edge that raised the hair on her arms. "You think you can just walk away? You have no idea what you're dealing with." He took another step closer, the hollow echoes of his footsteps resonating in the narrow alley. Panic twisted inside her. She couldn't let him box her in. Julia took a deep breath, her fingers gripping the steering wheel so fiercely she thought it might crack. She needed a way out, a way to break free from this confrontation, from the claws of her past. Her mind raced as she considered her next move. "Let me go. You don't have to do this," she pleaded, lowering her voice, searching for a hint of compassion. But Evan's eyes burned with an unsettling gleam, and the ease with which he responded crushed all hope. "Let you go?" he echoed, arching an eyebrow. "No, Julia. You're part of this now. For better or worse. You can't just disappear." Thoughts tumbled in her mind like loose dominoes. What did he mean? What were the implications of leaving her life behind? She had thought running away meant cutting all ties, severing the bonds of expectation and shame. "Why are you here?" she pressed, struggling to maintain an air of control. "You got what you wanted. Why play this game?" Evan's expression shifted, a whirl of emotions, veering from mockery to something dangerously serious. "What I want, Julia, is to make sure you understand the stakes. You think you can just buy a ticket to freedom? It doesn't work that way." Behind her, the engine ticking like a time bomb erupted into her consciousness. She could hear the faint echo of distant sirens approaching, clawing at the night. Without thinking, she opened the door and dashed toward the alley's exit, adrenaline urging her legs to move. "Julia! Stop!" he shouted, but the edge in his voice only fueled her speed. She didn't look back. She could hear him not far behind, the footsteps echoing in hot pursuit. As she dashed into the street, a blinding light flashed toward her from the left. A taxi? Or were the sirens closer than she thought? Julia didn't care, she just needed to put as much distance between them as possible. But before she could step fully into the street, she collided with another person shrieking. They both fell hard to the ground. The shock sent sparks through her limbs, and for a moment, everything blended into chaos. "What the?" The voice was familiar, yet jarring. "Get up, we need to go," Julia shouted, scrambling to her feet, shoving the figure before her. They both turned, and she was faced with a breathless, wide-eyed Jamie, the one friend she thought she'd lost forever, now standing there in the chaos. I was looking for you," he stammered, confusion lacing his voice. "There's no time. We need to move." But before she could explain anything, a shadow loomed behind her. Evan had caught up. This was it. Julia's heart thundered as she made a split-second decision. She turned to Jamie, feeling the weight of their shared history crashing down. Would he understand? Would he help her? "Trust me. Just run." From the corner of her eye, she saw Evan lurch forward, something glinting in his hand. With no time to lose, she took Jamie's arm and pulled him into the chaos, running into the fraying darkness ahead. Whether it was freedom or deeper trouble, she had no way of knowing. All she could do was run. What awaited them in the night was a blur, a future steeped in uncertainty, where every choice could tear her back into the shadows she thought she had escaped. But deep inside her, a flicker of resolve ignited. Because she was not done fighting. Not yet. As sirens wailed closer, one thing was clear: the hunt was just beginning. They sprinted down the slick pavement, fear surging through Julia like electricity. The thuds of their feet echoed against the buildings, a frantic rhythm matched only by her racing heart. Jamie stumbled beside her, struggling to keep up. He glanced back, eyes wide with confusion and terror. "Julia, what's happening?" he panted, pulling his arm from her grip for just a moment, disbelief coursing through him like ice. "Evan." She barely managed to spit out the name. "He's come back, and he thinks he can drag me back." A shout reverberated behind them, more furious than before. "Julia! You're not getting away that easy." Panic clawed at her throat. She whipped around a corner, her mind whirling for a way out. With each step, the walls felt closer, tightening like a noose. They weren't safe yet. "Where are we going?" Jamie pressed, desperation edging his words. "I don't know. Just keep running." Julia's voice was sharp with urgency, each word driving them faster. They tore through an alleyway that smelled of rain-soaked asphalt and gasoline. But the urgency led to another decision. They needed somewhere to hide, somewhere they could catch their breath. An old storage facility flickered at the end of the alley, its door ajar like an invitation or a warning. "Here!" Julia shouted, veering toward the shadows where the massive door stood slightly open, its creak echoing ominously as she pulled Jamie inside. Inside was dark, the faint smell of mildew hanging in the air. Julia's eyes adjusted quickly, scanning the rows of dilapidated shelves and dusty crates. She tucked herself behind a stack of boxes, pulling Jamie down beside her. "Why didn't you just go to the police?" Jamie whispered, trembling slightly as he pressed closer. Julia shot him a glare. "You think they would help?" "They can't." Before she could finish, footsteps echoed outside, heavy and deliberate. She held her breath, every muscle taut, every instinct screaming danger. Evan's voice drifted in, smooth and mocking. "I know you're in there, Julia. Hiding one to save you." A chill coursed through Julia, and she clutched Jamie's wrist tightly. He was breathing too fast, his eyes darting wildly in the shadows. "We can't let him find us," he said, panic raw in his voice. "Shoo!" she hissed, cutting him off. Evan continued, his tone softening, manipulating. "You don't want to do this, Julia. We had a good thing together. I can offer you security, a life. You really think you can make it alone?" Her heart raced, torn between the familiar shadows of her past and the fragile light of the present. Julia gritted her teeth. "I'm not going back, Evan, never again." "Don't be naive, Julia. You can't outrun the past. It's always chasing you," he replied, the hint of a smile creeping into his voice. Suddenly, the door creaked as something heavy pushed against it. They weren't safe for long. Julia could feel her pulse quickening again, each thud loud like a battle cry in her ears. "We have to go," she whispered fiercely. "Now." She lifted her head slightly to peer through a crack between the boxes, spotting Evan's silhouette, casting long shadows in the dim light. He was scanning the area, eyes sharp and calculating. "Where do you think you'll run? If you go out that door, I'll be waiting for you." Jamie shifted nervously, beads of sweat gathering on his forehead. "Julia, what are we going to do?" They could hear him moving closer, the tension palpable as Julia felt the weight of their choices crash down upon them. Time was slipping away. "Trust me," she said, hoping her voice didn't betray the fear gathering in her chest. Out of nowhere, she spotted a heavy metal pipe lying against the wall. It was rusty and dented, but it could serve as a weapon if it had to. "Give me a second," she murmured, edging closer to the pipe. Just as she grabbed it, a loud crash interrupted the silence. The door buckled, splintering under the pressure of Evan's relentless onslaught. They both turned wide-eyed as the door swung open, revealing his menacing figure framed by the moonlight. His expression held a mix of anger and triumph that jolted through Julia like a shockwave. "Found you," he breathed, a predatory smile stretching across his face. With his eyes trained directly on her, Julia realized this was it. The fight-or-flight instinct roared to life, igniting her will to survive. "Run!" she screamed to Jamie, the command erupting from her throat just as Evan lunged forward. With no time to waste, she charged at Evan, the pipe raised high, determined to face the storm head-on, but would it be enough? The darkness grew thicker, and Julia stood at the edge of a choice that would either set her free or pull her deeper into the abyss. The fight was far from over. Julia lunged forward, the pipe slashing through the air, her heart pounding wildly. But Evan was faster. With a sidestep, he caught her arm, twisting it painfully until the pipe slipped from her grasp and clattered to the ground. "Fighting back is cute," he sneered, his grip like iron around her wrist. The fear that had spurred her on a moment ago turned into icy dread. Jamie watched, eyes wide, rooted to the spot, his breath hitching as Julia struggled. "Let her go, Evan!" Jamie shouted, summoning whatever courage he had left. Julia shot him a look, desperate for him to stay back. This was her fight, she wouldn't let him get hurt. Evan pivoted, his focus shifting like a predator assessing its prey. "You think you can protect her? You're just as lost as she is." He yanked Julia closer, his breath hot against her face. "I came here to bring her home. This isn't a game." Julia felt the anger bubble inside her, pushing against the fear. "You don't own me," she spat, her voice firm despite the panic clawing at her insides. "I'm not your property." The amusement in Evan's eyes flickered and faded, revealing the monster underneath. "You don't get it." He let go of her wrist, only to push her back sharply, sending her stumbling. "Your past is a heavy burden, and I'm here to lighten it for you. You should be grateful." In that moment, Julia found her resolve. She wasn't going back. She wouldn't let him drag her into the fog of despair again. The shadows of the past felt insurmountable, but this time she had a plan, and Jamie needed to be part of it. "Jamie, run. Get help," she urged, her heart racing. But he shook his head vehemently, fear gripping him. "Not without you. Go." She didn't have a plan, but she could buy them time. Evan was still close, shifting his weight, his eyes restless. She spotted the heavy pipe beside her and grabbed it, pushing off a crate to regain her balance. With a swift motion, she swung the pipe at Evan, catching him by surprise. It connected with his shoulder, and he stumbled back, momentarily thrown off guard. "Now!" she yelled at Jamie, spurring him into action. He hesitated for a heartbeat, then sprinted toward the door, legs pumping, fear fueling his escape, Evan cursed, rubbing his shoulder. "You'll pay for that. You're not in control here." Julia shouted, her voice steady, feeding off Jamie's flight. She quickly followed, feeling like a coiled spring. But Evan lunged forward and caught Jamie by the collar just as he reached the threshold. "Let him go!" Julia screamed, her heart sinking. Evan pulled Jamie back, holding him tightly, the terror on Jamie's face almost gut-wrenching. "You think you can play hero? This isn't a movie, sweetheart. You're running out of time." In that moment, the desperation surged again. She had no weapon, no backup, but Julia saw a flicker of something: fear? Regret? In Evan's eyes. Maybe he was as trapped in his own darkness as she had been. "I want to become your puppet, Evan. You can't control me anymore," she yelled, watching as his grip faltered for just a second, then she dropped the pipe and ran straight at him, fueled by raw adrenaline. It was reckless, but she needed him to focus on her, to let go of Jamie. Every instinct told her it was the only way. "Julia!" Jamie screamed, yet she didn't flinch. This was for both of them. Evan's eyes widened as she barreled into him, their bodies colliding. He stumbled backward, loosening his grip on Jamie just enough for him to slip away, darting toward the door, but as Julia pushed Evan down, a cold threat loomed. A sharp crack echoed, and she spun to see Jamie's horrified face. "Watch out!" Evan had regained his balance, and he lunged, his hands aiming for the closest target: her. Julia's heart raced as she anticipated the impact, knowing that this fight would define their future. As she stood on the precipice of confrontation, all hung in the balance. Would she be able to free them both, or would the shadows of the past reclaim its hold? As the darkness closed in, Julia knew, the moment had come. The force of Evan's momentum crashed into Julia, but she twisted at the last moment, barely avoiding a full impact. Instead, they collided shoulder to shoulder, and Julia stumbled back. The fight was draining her, but the fire in her gut refused to flicker out. "Stop running!" Evan snarled, his voice deep and furious. He lunged forward again, but this time Julia was ready. She pivoted just in time, using his own weight against him to shove him off balance. "Get in the car!" she yelled at Jamie, who was still frozen in shock just beyond the door. His wide eyes darted between Julia and Evan. The world around them closed in like the walls of a high school gym. When the clock was about to run out on the final quarter, Jamie finally snapped back to life. He dashed to the car, heart racing, fumbling for the keys in his pocket. "Go, Julia!" he hollered, voice cracking with urgency. It was the rallying cry she needed. She could fight, but they needed to escape. Evan regained his footing and charged at her again, eyes wild with ungoverned rage. Julia barely ducked as his fist swiped through the air where her head had just been, the gust of it chilling her skin. "Stay down!" he roared, but his anger felt more desperate now, the words losing their power. Julia's chest heaved, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She sprinted toward the car, each step fueled by the thought of freedom just a few feet away. But Evan wasn't done yet. He lunged again and caught her wrist hard. "Stop!" he commanded, but she wouldn't relent. "Let go of me!" she screamed, twisting to break free. The adrenaline surged as she grappled against his grip, her heart hammering like a drum in her ears. With a final surge of strength, she yanked her arm free and broke away. She flung the door open, seeing Jamie's panic-stricken face inside the car. But before she could leap in, Evan lunged one last time, grabbing her by the neck with a grip that felt dangerously tight. Julia gasped, the world narrowing to the pressure surrounding her throat. "I want to let you go," Evan hissed, his breath reeking of fury. Julia's vision started to blur, but within that darkness, she felt the weight of her past trying to strangle her both physically and emotionally. "Enough!" she forced out, her voice barely a whisper laced with defiance. She was drowning in fear, but she had to fight back. Using all the strength drained from her, Julia brought her elbow back, slamming it hard into Evan's ribs. He gasped, and his grip loosened just enough for her to slip free like a fish in murky waters. "I'm not yours," she shouted, scrambling into the driver's seat and throwing a glance toward Jamie. "Get in." He dove into the passenger seat as Julia slammed the door shut, her heart racing. She turned the key, and the engine roared to life. Evan was already recovering, rage swirling in his eyes as he dashed to the front of the car. In barely a heartbeat, he was back, banging his fists against the hood. "Julia! This isn't over!" he shouted, but she just revved the engine, the wheels screeching as she pushed to accelerate from the grinding chaos. "Hold on!" she yelled at Jamie, who barely had time to brace himself. As the car lurched forward, a shattering sound echoed behind them. Julia pressed on the gas, not daring to look back. It was sheer instinct escape at any cost, but the lingering threat gnawed at her every thought. The escape felt surreal, wind roaring around them as they raced away. Was it really over? What had just happened? Had she really left it all behind? Did we lose him? Jamie's voice shook with uncertainty, a hint of hope glimmering through the fear as he turned to look back through the rear window. "I don't know." Julia's voice faded, her chest tight with the possibility of darkness still looming. The relentless hum of the engine was a bitter reminder of their new reality. Freedom was fleeting, and shadows were never far behind. Julia gripped the steering wheel tight, driving further into the night, but the question loomed, what had they really escaped, and at what cost? The headlights sliced through the darkness. But with every turn, the road ahead felt more uncertain. The dread sat heavy in her heart, knotting her stomach. She glanced at Jamie, who was still catching his breath next to her. The silence was thick with suspense and unspoken fears. What if Evan wasn't the only one after them? What if the past had its claws deep and wouldn't let go? As they sped into the night, shadows danced in the rearview mirror. And beneath the flickering glow, they both knew this was only the beginning of the end. What would they do next? How far would they go to finally break free? Julia's grip tightened around the steering wheel, knuckles turning white against the dark leather. The engine roared beneath her, steady and defiant, a stark contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded. They sped down the winding road, shadows flanking them like menacing whispers. "Where are we going?" Jamie asked, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and confusion. He glanced nervously over his shoulder, half expecting to see Evan's rage-fueled figure sprinting after them. I don't know," Julia admitted, the words escaping like air from a balloon. Panic surged through her again. "We just have to get away, far away from him." "Consider the plan, Julia," Jamie urged, trying to bring her back to clarity. "We can't just run without a destination." What what? She snapped, frustration boiling over. "What if we just let him find us? I want to go back." Silence fell between them, heavy and suffocating. The hum of the engine masked the thoughts racing in her mind, and yet the adrenaline kept pushing her forward. Julia pushed down her mounting dread, willing herself to focus. They needed a safe place, somewhere to regroup. "How about the old warehouse?" Jamie suggested, his hesitation barely masking the urgency he felt. "The one by the docks? It's abandoned and far enough from the city to sure," she cut him off, "as long as Evan doesn't catch up." The words hung in the air, but she forced her eyes back on the road. Suddenly, the distant wail of sirens pierced through the night, sending chills prickling down her spine. "Do you hear that?" Julia's heart dropped, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Jamie nodded, his brow furrowed. "I hope it's not for us. Maybe we shouldn't have drawn so much attention." She glanced at the gas gauge and saw the hollow warning light illuminate. "Just perfect. We need to stop soon, but not until we're sure we're safe." As Julia made a hard right turn onto a narrow stretch of road lined with tall trees, the sirens faded into the distance, but her pulse didn't settle. They drove in silence, the darkness stretching ahead like a grasping hand. What if Evan is connected to something bigger? What if we stumbled into more danger than we realized? Jamie asked, his voice dropping to a whisper, almost as if saying it out loud would summon their fears. Just stop. We can deal with that later. Julia forced her voice to remain steady, but her heart thumped violently against her chest. She remembered the darkness behind Evan's eyes, the way he lunged at her, consumed by something sinister. It terrified her to think of it. As they crested a hill, the old warehouse finally loomed in the darkness, a skeletal structure against the sky. Any part of Julia that hoped for safety wavered. She parked the car, glancing at Jamie, whose eyes reflected her apprehension. "Let's check it out," he suggested, unbuckling his seatbelt. "Just stay close." Julia stepped out, the chill of the night air cutting through the haze of adrenaline. The world felt eerily still. Even the crickets had stopped chirping, as though they sensed the tension in the air. As they scanned the area, an unsettling sensation prickled at Julia's nerves, making the hairs on her arms stand on end. The silence was too thick, too loud. It swallowed her voice as she beckoned for Jamie to follow her toward the cracked entrance. Just as they approached, an echo of footsteps resonated from inside the warehouse. The sound froze them in their tracks. "Did you hear that?" Jamie whispered, eyes wide. Yeah, Julia clenched her fists, heart racing. The door creaked eerily as she pushed it open, revealing a dim, cavernous space filled with debris and shadows. An unseen light flickered somewhere deep within. A rush of footsteps sounded again, followed by a low, menacing voice. "Welcome back." The word sent a chill through Julia's entire body. They were not alone. "Run!" she screamed, grabbing Jamie's arm. They turned to bolt, but the doorway behind them collapsed with a loud crash, trapping them inside. What awaited them in the dark? Would they fight or flee, and could they escape the horrors now unfolding? A deafening silence followed Julia's desperate plea. The crash of the door echoed through the cold, damp air, reverberating off the walls like a sinister laugh. Fear gnawed at Julia's insides as she faced the dark abyss before them, a yawning mouth ready to swallow them whole. "Julia!" Jamie's voice broke through the panic, fear morphing into urgency. "What do we do now?" "We need to find another way out," she shot back, adrenaline pumping, her mind racing. They darted deeper into the warehouse, shadows swirling around them, the flickering light illuminating just enough to reveal their surroundings. Rusted machinery and forgotten crates stood watch like sentinels of despair. Suddenly, the low voice echoed again, twisting in the air, wrapping around them like a noose. "You think you can escape so easily?" A surge of cold washed over Julia. "Who are you?" she called into the shadows, her voice trembling. A figure stepped into the light, a smile stretching across his face that lacked warmth. It was a face she didn't immediately recognize, but the gleam in his eye sent panic racing through her veins. "Let's just say I'm an old friend of Evan's." Every instinct screamed to run, but there was nowhere to go. She glanced back at Jamie, whose wide eyes mirrored her own fear. "Listen to me," the stranger said, his voice oily and smooth. "Evan has plans for you both. And trust me, you're going to want to stay for the show." "Plans?" Julia spat, dread clawing at her throat. "What plans?" Suddenly, a loud crash interrupted whatever he intended to say. The floor beneath them trembled slightly, forcing Julia to grasp Jamie's arm tighter. Something was coming. Whatever it was, it approached with heavy footsteps, far too loud to be human. "Where's the exit?" Jamie whispered urgently, his voice barely audible over the cracks and creaks of the old building. "Just keep moving," Julia urged, instincts taking over. They darted past broken crates and shattered glass, weaving through the debris. The echoes of their footsteps mixed with the approaching sound, a threatening rhythm that filled Julia's ears. "Get behind me," she shouted, instinctively pushing Jamie out of the way as a flickering shadow burst into the dim light. It was Evan. "Did you really think you could run forever?" Evan sneered, his eyes burning with manic ferocity. "You two are in over your heads. This is just the beginning." Julia's heart raced. Her mind screamed for options, and she couldn't think straight. They had to find a way out. Rushing to her left was a pitch-black corridor lined with rust-stained walls, the only possible escape. "Come on!" she yelled, sprinting toward the darkness with Jamie at her heels. They plunged into the corridor, feeling the temperature drop as they disappeared into the unknown. With every step, Julia fought against the dread pooling in her stomach. She glanced back at the flickering light behind them, heart racing at the thought of what they were running from. But the corridor offered only shadows, stretching into a seemingly endless void. What if there's no way out? Jamie's voice trembled slightly, each word laced with despair. "We have to keep moving," she insisted. Just as they pushed forward, tinkling metal echoed behind them. Evan had launched into the chase, and his determination was a festering wound in her chest. As the corridor twisted on itself, Julia's mind whirled with questions. What if Evan was more than just a man? What if everything they thought they knew was wrong? They had to find a door, a window, anything, and then, they saw it, a faint light ahead, brighter than the void around them. Hope ignited in Julia's chest, urging her forward. "Look," she shouted, pointing toward the glow. But just as they raced toward it, a figure emerged from the shadows, blocking their path. "Going somewhere?" The voice dripped with malice. It was another shadow, bigger than Evan, a looming threat that promised only chaos. Stunned, they skidded to a stop, breathless. Julia's heart pounded as she realized there was no easy way out now. They had no choice but to fight their way through the darkness, but as she faced down whatever horror was before her, she couldn't help but wonder what price would they have to pay to escape this seemingly endless nightmare. Determined to confront the danger head-on, Julia tightened her fists, ready for whatever awaited them. In the chaotic pulse of her heart, one thought lingered: would they survive the night? The darkness loomed like a living thing, pressing in as Julia faced the shadowy figure blocking their escape. The palpable tension filled her, the noise of her heart pounding drowning out any rational thought. Beside her, Jamie was a bundle of raw nerves, his eyes darting between the looming threat and Julia, pleading for direction. "Stay close," she whispered urgently. She could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins like wildfire. This was a fight for survival, and she wouldn't go down without a fight. "Who are you?" she shouted, demanding strength she didn't feel. The figure stepped closer, revealing a man with cold eyes and a crooked grin. "Someone new, someone dangerous." "I'm the one who ensures no one disrupts Evan's plans," he sneered, the threat in his voice sending chills down Julia's spine. "And you just made a terrible mistake escaping." "Look at me," she shot back, her voice gaining a shred of confidence. "I'm not afraid of you or Evan. You don't control me." The man stepped forward, ready to shout something when the very ground trembled beneath them. Unseen machinery roared to life, reverberating through the warehouse like an awakening beast. Julia instinctively took a step closer to Jamie, their shoulders brushing together for reassurance. Suddenly, the wall behind the man exploded as a burst of light flooded in. The doorway they had seen earlier, the one they had hoped would lead them to freedom, was now glowing with promise. "It's now or never," Julia yelled, grabbing Jamie's wrist and pulling him toward the sanctuary of the light. The figure stumbled momentarily, surprised by the sudden chaos. In that split second, they surged past him, the fierce intensity of their flight driven by the need for survival. Julia felt the rush of air around them, each step propelling them closer to freedom. This moment was a culmination of everything they had fought against: the past, the fear, Evan, and the shadows that had threatened to engulf her life. But as they approached the light, familiar laughter echoed from behind. "You think you can escape that easily?" Evan's voice pierced through the chaos, ice-cold dread prickling Julia's skin. Her breath quickened, but she couldn't falter now. She had come too far. As they broke free from the shadows into the blinding light, she exposed the path ahead, a stretch of broken pavement leading to the back of the warehouse that opened into an alley. Without looking back, Julia kept her grip on Jamie, racing down the path. They emerged into the moonlit alley, the cool air hitting her face like a much-needed reminder of what freedom felt like. "Keep running. We can find a way to shake him," Julia urged as they tore down the dimly lit passage, taking deep breaths to fuel their resolve. Each step felt lighter than the last, their shared spirit galaxy-sized a force pulling them through. As they rounded a corner, they skidded to a halt. Ahead was the bustling street, alive with the noise of nightlife, a stark contrast to the darkness they had just escaped. But they didn't have time for hesitation. Julia turned to Jamie, her determination stealing. "We just need to blend in. Let us find a taxi or a bus," she suggested, realization washing over her that they had to erase every trace of who they had been. They had to leave Evan behind, but then the chilling sound of laughter echoed behind them, a reminder that they were not out of danger yet. "You will pay for this." Evan's voice lingered, an ominous threat hanging in the air. But Julia yelled back defiantly, "Never. You've lost your hold on me." Suddenly, a taxi screeched to a halt nearby, and Julia flung open the door. "Drive. Just go," she shouted, almost tumbling inside as Jamie followed. The driver's eyes widened, but he didn't hesitate. He slammed the gas pedal, tires burning as they sped away from the darkness. With each block they put between themselves and Evan, Julia felt hope ignite, an unquenchable fire burning against the shadows of her past. They drove deeper into the city, where the streetlights whispered freedom and the night held endless possibilities. Finally, they screeched to a stop amid the chaos of the city. "Are we safe?" Jamie gasped, glancing back nervously. "For now," Julia replied, catching her breath. She couldn't believe they had made it this far. But the reality of what lay behind them dulled the victory in her chest. They were alive, but uncertainty still loomed like dark clouds. "You're stronger than you think," Jamie said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We made it through together." In that moment, Julia realized that this was just the beginning. They had both chosen to fight together. And with the city sprawling before them, under the spiraling stars, she breathed in the essence of a new life waiting to unfold. As they stepped out into the streets, breathing in possibilities, Julia vowed one thing: she wouldn't just survive, she would thrive. She owed herself that, and with a flicker of hope blazing deep within her, she took a step forward, ready for whatever came next. They were free now, both scarred and powerful, and she knew they would never look back. But one last thought lingered behind. Evan was still out there. The fight for their future had just begun. Now it's time for you to make a choice. Subscribe immediately to this channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories unfolding in real time. Smash that like button now to help us grow and keep bringing you intense narratives. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about what comes next for Julia and Jamie. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to dive into this thrilling world. You need to show your support. Only true fans understand the path to this channel's success.